We experience emotions with our whole bodies, the clenching of the muscles with excitement, the beating of the heart with joy, and above all, the utter sensuality of relaxation, the sand between your toes, and the sun on your face, and the wind in your hair.
Just as your body has two fundamental sensations, pleasure and pain, as signs of its welfare or injury, as a barometer of its basic alternative, life or death, so your consciousness has two fundamental emotions, joy and suffering, in answer to the same alternative. Your emotions are estimates of that which furthers your life or threatens it. Lightning calculators, giving you a sum of your profit or loss. You have no choice about your capacity to feel that something is good for you or evil. But what you will consider good or evil, what will give you joy or pain, what you will love or hate, desire or fear, depends on your standard of value. Emotions are inherent in your nature, but their content is dictated by your mind. Your emotional capacity is an empty motor, and your values are the fuel with which your mind fills it. If you choose a mix of contradictions, it will clog your motor, and then wreck you on your first attempt to move with a machine which you, the driver, have corrupted. If you hold the irrational as your standard of value, and the impossible as your concept of the good, if you long for rewards you have not earned, for a fortune or a love you don't deserve, if you desire the opposite of existence, you will reach it. Do not cry when you reach it. That life is frustration, and that happiness is impossible to man. Check your fuel. It brought you where you wanted to go. Happiness is not to be achieved at the command of emotional whims. Happiness is not the satisfaction of whatever irrational wishes you might blindly attempt to indulge. Happiness is a state of non-contradictory joy, a joy without penalty or guilt, a joy that does not clash with any of your values and does not work for your own destruction. Not the joy of escaping from your mind, but of using your mind's fullest power. Not the joy of faking reality, but of achieving values that are real. Not the joy of a drunkard, but of a producer. Happiness is possible only to a rational man, the man who desires nothing but rational goals and finds his joy in nothing but rational actions. From his discovery that he has to make choices, man knows that his desperate need of self-esteem is a matter of life or death. He knows that he must know his own value in order to maintain his own life. He knows that he has to be right. To be wrong in action means danger to his life. To be wrong in person, to be evil, means to be unfit for existence. Every act of man's life has to be willed. The mere act of obtaining or eating his food implies that the person he preserves is worthy of being preserved. Every pleasure he seeks to enjoy implies that the person who seeks it is worthy of finding enjoyment. He has no choice about his need of self-esteem. His only choice is the standard by which to gauge it, and he makes his fatal error when he switches this gauge, protecting his life, into the service of his own destruction, when he chooses a standard contradicting existence and sets his self-esteem against reality. Every form of causeless self-doubt, every feeling of inferiority and secret unworthiness is in fact man's hidden dread of his inability to deal with existence. But the greater his terror, the more fiercely he clings to the murderous doctrines that choke him. It is not any crime you have ever committed that infects your soul with permanent guilt. It is none of your failures, errors, or flaws, but the blank out by which you attempt to evade them. It is not any sort of original sin or unknown prenatal deficiency, but the knowledge and fact of your basic default, of suspending your mind, of refusing to think. Fear and guilt are your chronic emotions. They are real, and you do deserve them. but they don't come from the superficial reasons you invent to disguise their cause. Not from your selfishness, weakness, or ignorance, but from a real and basic threat to your existence. Fear, because you have abandoned your weapon of survival. Guilt, because you know you have done it volitionally. Those irrational wishes that draw you to their creed. Those emotions you worship as an idol on whose altar you sacrifice the earth. That dark, incoherent passion within you which you take as the voice of God or of your glands is nothing more than the corpse of your mind. An emotion that clashes with your reason, an emotion that you cannot explain or control, is only the carcass of that stale thinking which you forbade your mind to revise. As there can be no causeless wealth, so there can be no causeless love, or any sort of causeless emotion. An emotion is a response to a fact of reality, an estimate dictated by your standards. To love is to value. The man who tells you that it is possible to value without values, to love those whom you appraise as worthless,
love your enemies,
is the man who tells you that it is possible to grow rich by consuming without producing, and that paper money is as valuable as gold.
Which passages of Scripture should guide our public policy? Should we go with Leviticus, or should we just stick to the Sermon on the Mount? A passage that is so radical that it's doubtful that our own Defense Department would survive its application.
Observe that he does not expect you to feel a causeless fear.
This crisis could turn into a catastrophe. A bad situation could become dramatically worse. Catastrophic results. It's a ticking time bomb.
When his kind get into power, they are expert at giving you ample cause to feel the fear by which they desire to rule you. But when it comes to love, the highest of emotions, you permit them to shriek at you accusingly that you are a moral delinquent if you're incapable of feeling causeless love.
Love thy neighbor as thyself. In the 21st century, we've learned that this truth is central not just to our own lives, but to our success as a nation.
When a man feels fear without reason, you call him to the attention of a psychiatrist. You are not so careful to protect the meaning, the nature, and the dignity of love. Love is the expression of one's values, the greatest reward you can earn for the moral qualities you have achieved in your character and person. The emotional price paid by one man for the joy he receives from the virtues of another.
Fucking son of a bitch, you asshole!
Your morality demands that you divorce your love from values and hand it down to any vagrant, not as response to his worth, but as response to his need. Not as reward, but as alms. Not as a payment for virtues, but as a blank check on vices. The moral symbol of respect for human beings is the trader. We who live by values, not by loot, are traders, both in matter and in spirit. A trader is a man who earns what he gets and does not give or take the undeserved. A trader does not ask to be paid for his failures, nor does he ask to be loved for his flaws. A trader does not squander his body as fodder or his soul as alms. Just as he does not give his work except in trade for material values, so he does not give the values of his spirit, his love, his friendship, his esteem, except in payment and in trade for human virtues.